Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, France attempts to hold a peace conference against Israel's will. A teenage terrorist is sentenced to prison, and Israel celebrates its first ever holiday in honor of its immigrant population. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. Israel is once again reiterating that any efforts to resolve the conflict with the Palestinians must be centered on direct negotiations and not on international conferences. That's the message Israel's acting national security advisor Jacob Nagel and senior envoy Yitzhak Molho delivered to French envoy Pierre Vimont at a meeting in Jerusalem. The two explained in no uncertain terms that Israel will not attend the International Peace Conference Paris hopes to convene by year's end. The senior Israeli official stressed that Jerusalem is committed to the genuine advancement of the peace process, but that any initiatives other than two-party talks with Ramallah would be counterproductive and only distance a resolution to the conflict. Israel wants France to stop promoting its conference, saying it would actually inflict severe damage on prospects of advancing the peace process by enabling Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to continue evading face-to-face talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu without preconditions. Despite Israel's expectations, France has decided to go ahead and issue invitations to the Mideast Conference. Senior French diplomats told the Haaretz paper that Israel's negative response was predictable, and even though it will be taken into consideration, they will nevertheless carry on promoting their peace initiative. The French envoy Pierre Vimont also met with PA President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah, where the news was greeted with enthusiasm.
They want to continue with their settlement activities, torpedoing the two-state solution, believing that they can replace the two-state solution with what we call one state, two systems.
The Palestinian negotiator went on to slam the Israeli government for its stance.
Our deep appreciation for the French and their initiative, and we were officially informed by the French envoy that France intends to issue the invitations for an international conference in December before the end of this year.
France has repeatedly tried to breathe new life into the peace process this year that's been stagnated since 2014. Paris hosted a preliminary gathering this past June where the UN, European Union, US, and major Arab countries discussed proposals without the Israelis or the Palestinians. The end of the year follow-up conference envisioned the participation of both parties, but now that Israel has refused to attend, it remains to be seen what, if anything, that summit can accomplish. As more and more voters are finally displaying their voting preferences on social media, the Israeli Prime Minister is standing steadfast in his impartial stance on the elections. Netanyahu says the relationship between Israel and the U.S. will stay strong no matter who's elected, and is warning Israeli ministers to keep their opinions to themselves. The Prime Minister's comments come just after opposition leader Isaac Herzog took a stand, demanding Netanyahu not to take sides and claiming such interference will damage the Israeli public. Meanwhile, yet another poll has come out in Israel, this time by the Army Radio, revealing that the majority of its respondents believe Trump is a better candidate for Israel, but will be backing Clinton despite that stance. The voting booths are officially open, and the fate of the United States is in the hands of the American people. With all the speeches and ads coming to a close, it falls on us to analyze the candidates ourselves. Joining us now in the studio are U.S. political analyst Fred Menachem and Abraham Katzman, the counsel to Republican Overseas Israel, to help us make this decision. Thank you so much for coming in, guys.
It's great to see you, Natasha.
Thank you.
So to begin, yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but Pennsylvania became the next in a long list of states to pass legislation against the BDS movement, which many Israelis claim is founded in anti-Semitism. Now, which candidate can American Jews, in your guys' opinion, trust more to not only fight the BDS movement, but to also create an environment in which legislation like this can pass?
Well, surprisingly, I think it's the Republicans. No, you take a look, for example, at the team that Donald Trump has put together. I recognize that Donald Trump himself might be a little bit of a blank slate, but at least you take a look at the Rudy Giuliani's and Mike Pence and Newt Gingrich and John Bolton and his special Israel aides, and these are people who are, these are A-listers when it comes to Israel support. I don't think that you have anything comparable on the other side, and I think that also you've got another problem, and that is that within the Democratic Party, unfortunately, once upon a time, support for Israel was really bipartisan, and I wish it were still the same, but I think there's been significant erosion among the Democrats. We saw it during the platform fight this summer. There was a motion to put language, in essence, condemning Israel for settlement policies and occupation. And it was rejected, but it got 44% of the vote, and the people who put it up were chanting "Free, free Palestine." That's not happening in the Republican Party. I wish it weren't happening among the Democrats either, but that's where we stand now.
Fred, what's your take?
Well, you asked a question about BDS, so we'll talk about that for a moment. And by the way, what I think was the best thing that you said was that Donald Trump is a blank slate. And the reality is we're talking about electing the next president of the United States, and I have a Donald Trump supporter sitting next to me who's claiming on television that he's a blank slate. That's concerning to me. As far as BDS, listen, at the end of the day, Hillary Clinton's record on Israel has been stellar. Outside of, during all the time she was a U.S. Senator from New York, she had endorsements from predominantly, most of the major Jewish organizations in America. Her voting record has been stellar in Israel. No doubt, under the Obama administration, she had to play the game a little bit, but she's come out strong for Israel. And in fact, this is the most incredible part about it is today, because of this disaster of Donald Trump, because of the nationalism that he's, really racism that he's hiding using nationalism, Orthodox rabbis that generally don't get involved and generally would endorse Republicans, two top Orthodox rabbis in the United States, Agudath Israel, as well as from Agudath Israel, as well as the head of the Orthodox Union, just came out with a stellar endorsement of Hillary Clinton. So as far as I'm concerned, Hillary Clinton is going to be fantastic, as it relates to Israel, and more importantly, as it relates to making sure that she's opposed to BDS. She said it. She wrote in a letter recently that was well read. And that's the reality of it. So I'm pretty confident that she's going to be fine, and far better than Donald Trump because, as you said, he's a blank slate.
So let's continue on the line of the issue of anti-Semitism. Donald Trump was just recently accused of anti-Semitism by the Anti-Defamation League for his last campaign ad in which he spoke about dangerous people in Washington, and there were images of successful Jewish Americans flashing by. Was this a fair accusation in your opinion?
No, not at all. And unfortunately, along with the what I think is the erosion in the Democratic Party, we've seen erosion of the Anti-Defamation League. The ADL is not what it was under Abe Foxman. Their new CEO came straight out of the Obama administration. He was a special assistant to President Obama, and it's the equivalent of having the Obama administration say, this is a racist ad, this is an anti-Semitic ad. Look, this is a 2-minute long ad. There are maybe 5 seconds in which the chairman of the Federal Reserve, George Soros, and the head of Goldman Sachs are pictured, along with lots of other people, with world leaders, with all kinds. I watched it a couple of times, and I just don't see what the panic is about.
Fred?
Well, actually, I would agree with you about something. I do agree the ADL has gone too far. See, I'm a guy that worked in Democratic politics my whole life, who's now NPA. So I would agree with that. I'm not here to just spew out rhetoric. I agree with you. What I don't agree with is the fact that you're saying that the ad in and of itself was not anti-Semitic. The reality is this: if Donald Trump didn't have this record, this nationalistic record, to basically spread hate and create divisiveness and to basically use code language, which is what I call it, and really spread vitriol and hate and anti-Semitism and anti-Hispanic, rhetoric, then I'd say, you know what? The ad wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But because of this hate and this divisive language that he has spewed throughout this entire campaign, there's no way I could say that it wasn't the case. And I think he's speaking directly, by the way, to great American people who he's fooled, who he's deceived, American people that basically he's lied to, convinced them that immigrants were taking their jobs. And so they don't understand. The reality is that's what he's doing. He's feeding the frenzy, and it's wrong, and it's anti-Semitic.
Look, I think that's terribly unfair, and I think that not only that, but the idea of this, the dog whistle accusation that he's using coded language. Hillary Clinton herself has made explicit anti-Semitic comments. She's on. You can ask Paul Frey, who was a consultant to her husband's campaign. She called him an effing Jew bastard in front of witnesses. Dick Morris asked for a raise. She said, "You people, money.
Dick
That's
Morris
all you people." She said, "Hey, there are
personal things behind
there."
Right.
Anyway, she said to him, "Money. That's all you think about. All you people think about is money." And you can go down the line. The guard for 7 years in Arkansas. Larry Patterson speaks about all the times that he heard anti-Semitic comments coming from her. All I want to know, you can dispute them all. I'm just saying that all the people who are so panicky, all the people who are so panicky about some coded language, where is the investigation on the other side?
Actually, in the defense of what you're saying, sure, things have been said, but I can tell you this: I worked for Bill Clinton. I know the Clintons. I spent lots of time with the Clintons, not just for 5 minutes. I've spent, over the years and years, and I know for a fact, her record when it comes to anti-Semitism, her record when it comes to immigration, her record when it comes to supporting ethnic diverse groups. So yes, people say things come out in a public world. I mean, it's impossible for any of us, including Donald Trump. It's impossible, but this guy says things 24/7. That's the difference. And the difference is she has a track record. He doesn't. In his business acumen, there's been lawsuits, discrimination. I spent time with Donald Trump. I spent time with Donald Trump in Miami. Recently in Doral, there's a whole issue. Over and over, the people have had to hide from him. People have accused him of discrimination. This is not something that's happened once or twice. It's consistent. And by the way, when we look at somebody's record, we have to look at the record that's available. Hillary Clinton has a record of voting, right? But in this case, Donald Trump has a record of his business acumen. And the reality is, you put the two together, I think Hillary Clinton certainly is, not only is she the better candidate, but she's going to be the next president of the United States.
Now let's talk about the Israeli Prime Minister for a second, who has made it his mission to not allow other Israeli leaders and ministers to provide their opinions about which candidate to vote for. The question is this policy of non-involvement the right policy to have right now, or should American Israelis be hearing the opinions of Israeli leaders?
I think it's not a smart thing to have Israeli leaders, no matter how strong their personal opinions might be, make expressions about who they would prefer to be president. I'm sure they have opinions. I'm sure they have strong opinions. But it's really not the place of the Israeli government, speaking as the Israeli government, to express a preference for a particular candidate.
On one hand, I agree with you. On the other hand, you can't pressure people, that are politicians, that, by the way, that are elected in their own right. Bibi didn't elect them. They're all elected on their own. They have the right to their opinion. If it's not an official opinion, I agree with you, but they have the right to opinion. They should be able to say whatever they want. This is a free democratic country as well, and our greatest ally. But at the end of the day, when it comes to, what you're talking about, it doesn't really matter what politicians are doing at this point, because every survey, including the most recent Pew survey, shows that the majority of Israelis support Hillary Clinton.
Not American Israelis.
Talking about this.
The only issue, though, is that we're seeing this poll that came out from iVote Israel saying that 49% of those surveyed did vote for Trump, even though the majority of the people said that they backed Hillary. Now, at the same time, we're seeing a situation where the majority of those voting for Trump are coming from the settlements, which is... Right.
Correct. It's a skewed. There's two different surveys, and you're right. And we should look at all the information.
There are lots of different surveys. This is one example.
Right. And you have a valid point, but they did come from the settlement, so of course there's going to be a jaded opinion. The survey I'm talking about, it has nothing to do with voters, which is all of Israel, the Pew, and we all trust Pew, very unbiased, nonpartisan organization, and clearly Israelis back Hillary Clinton, and that's the reality. Donald Trump scares them.
If you look at the poll, they said they thought that Trump would actually be friendlier toward Israel, and nevertheless, they felt more comfortable with Hillary, even though she would be less less inclined to be friendly to Israel because of her record that you talk about. Now, in these polls, okay, so Israelis said this. American Israelis who actually vote and who actually pay attention and who actually see what's going on in America a little bit closer than the random Israeli, and not entirely from the settlements. We're talking, 16%, I believe, live in settlements.
Well, the question is the percentage of American Israelis that are actually voting, right?
Of Americans who vote. This is of Americans who voted through I Vote Israel and I think the Overseas Voter Foundation or one of these other foundations. But there's an undercount there, but that's a different story. But there's an undercount in the poll also. In 2012. 22% of the electorate from Israel was ultra-Orthodox. In the I Vote poll, it was 8%. It was an email poll, and lots of ultra-Orthodox don't use email, and the ultra-Orthodox vote was 85% Trump. If you add that together, you're probably dealing with something in the area of 60-40. I don't know if it matters at the end of the day, but that's the reality.
All I think that matters is that obviously there's opinions on both sides, but it's not a legitimate poll in the sense of it wasn't done scientifically. And you just gave me the information yourself. So it's not necessarily realistic, but of course there's people on both sides. But the reality is this: Jews, America and Jews in Israel make almost half the population of our people. And 3-to-1 Jews in America support Israel. And Orthodox rabbis who would never come out for a Democratic candidate are now endorsing her publicly. It says that, God forbid, Donald Trump gets in office, none of us know what's going to happen. And the reality is, I'm a guy that supports plenty of Republican Carlos Curbelo, Ileana Ross-Layton, Mario Diaz-Balart, my dear friends, but I would never support Donald Trump for president.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, we're going to have to end it here, and I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. We're all anxious, I know.
Yep.
All right, thank you guys so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
You may remember the huge controversy that erupted last year when PA President Mahmoud Abbas accused Israel of killing a Palestinian child in police detention. The teenager was actually alive and well and was even being treated at an Israeli hospital for injuries he sustained while carrying out a terror attack in Jerusalem. Well, now he's recovered, and it's his sentence that's evoking controversy. Ahmed Mansara is now 14 years old, and the Jerusalem District Court wants to make sure he won't be launching any more attacks for a long time to come. He's been sentenced to serve 12 years in prison for having critically wounded a 12-year-old Israeli boy on a bicycle in a stabbing attack, as well as a man on the street in October of 2015. Both the victims have recovered, although Manasra's 15-year-old cousin and accomplice was killed by police during their bloody assault. It was one of the first stabbings in the months-long wave of violence that spread alarm across Israel. Prosecutors argue the sentence corresponds with the severity of the crime.
בית המשפט קבע כי בנקל יכלו מעשיו של הנאשם להסתיים בקטילת חיי אדם. אין מנוס מהטלת עונשי מאסר ממושכים על כל מי שלוקח חלק בפיגועי הטרור נגד חפים מפשע, יהיו אשר יהיו.
The Israeli lawyer for the accused strongly disagrees and is defending the 14-year-old's actions.
And the verdict of a young boy, less than 13, who went together with his cousin in order to frighten the Jews, not to kill them, are very harsh, and they are frightening because they are opening a horizon of horror in this country. And I'm really terrified.
Several dozen Palestinians are also protesting the verdict in Ramallah in front of the local United Nations office.
نطالب الأمم المتحدة وكل مؤسسات المجتمع الدولي أن تحمي الطفولة الفلسطينية، أن تضع حدا لهذه الممارسات الإسرائيلية المستمرة تجاه الأطفال سواء بالاعتقال بالتعذيب أو بالمحاكمات الجائرة.
Over the past year, 35 Israelis and 2 visiting Americans were murdered in similar Palestinian terror attacks. The Fijian Prime Minister is currently touring the Middle East to discuss his nation's role in the United Nations peacekeeping forces operating in the region. And it turns out the island leader has also stopped by here in Israel to ask for Israel's help with combating a whole different issue, climate change. LTV's Aaron Porras has more on the story.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu received his visiting counterpart from the Pacific Island nation, Frank Bainimarama, with warmth. He also used his opening remarks as an opportunity to stress Israel's commitment to peace.
I'm glad that you had the opportunity to help us with peacekeeping efforts. They're not easy. The quest for peace is difficult, but we remain committed to it. And you know, Mr. Prime Minister, every time there is a foreign leader here, stands here, I always say, look, I'll be happy to begin peace negotiations without any conditions, of course, but direct negotiations with President Abbas. Why don't you invite me to your country? And I mean it when I say it. But in your case, on Fiji, in your beautiful country, I really mean it. And I will not regret if the negotiations take another week, it'll be fine. So in that spirit of friendship and amity and partnership, I welcome you and your colleagues to Jerusalem. Welcome.
Thank you, Excellency.
Out of the many issues slated for discussion between the two world leaders, Bainimarama stressed agriculture and climate change among those most important to his country.
We are here to help. We are here to keep the peace, and that commitment will continue now and in the years ahead. I'm also looking forward to Israel's support, sir, on a range of issues, on medical, on renewable energy, including agriculture, and especially our effort to draw global attention to the need for more decisive action on climate change. Mm-hmm. The rising sea levels and extreme weather events associated with climate change threaten our very existence in the Pacific. And we need the support of Israel and every nation as we take the fight to Morocco later on in the week in COP22, later in the month. Mm-hmm.
After the meeting with Netanyahu ended, the Fijian premier continued his visit at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Center, after attending a ceremony at the museum's Hall of Remembrance. Bainimarama laid a wreath and enhanced an eternal flame to commemorate the 6 million Jews killed by the Nazis during World War II.
With all the attention on the U.S. elections, many are forgetting that there's cause for big celebration in the Holy Land. Today is also the first official Aaliyah Day here in Israel, and people from across the nation will be honoring all those who've chosen to immigrate to the country. The term Aliyah literally translates as ascension in English. This is because according to Judaism, one's soul is actually elevated by coming to live in the Jewish state. The Knesset officially declared the holiday this past June. It's being marked with formal celebrations in the plenum, a special cabinet session, and events at the president's residence. Other activities are being held in the nation's schools, the army, and the police force. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is praising the tremendous contribution the many different communities not only make to the Jewish state itself, but also in diplomatic relations with their countries of origin. Nearly all Israelis are either immigrants themselves or the descendants of those who are. Much of Israel's immigrant population fled or survived the Holocaust, and others were expelled from Arab countries in the early 1950s after Israel's founding. The Prime Minister says he sees Aliyah as a foundation of the Jewish state and the fulfillment of the biblical prophecy for the Jewish people to return and rebuild their land. Get ready for Wonder Baby, because congratulations are in order for Israeli Wonder Woman Gal Gadot, who just announced she's expecting yet again. The Israeli actress revealed the stork's going to be making a return visit with a post on Instagram. Using the hashtag Mommy for the second time, she wrote, "So excited to share this wonder with you." The happy development appeared alongside a photo of herself and her husband Yaron Valsano, with their hands creating the shape of a heart on her tummy. The former Miss Israel is best known abroad for her role as Wonder Woman on the big screen, in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. She also made 3 other major motion pictures this year, with 2 more Wonder Woman movies set for release in 2017, pretty much proving her extraordinary talents. Gadot's most important production, though, is the latest addition to her family, which already includes 5-year-old daughter Alma, and even though she admits she never really planned to be an actress, Gadot says she's grateful to be playing a strong female superhero for both girls and boys to look up to. As we say in Hebrew, for a healthy pregnancy, Bisha'a Tova. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Israeli Wonder Woman actress Gal Gadot has just revealed that she's pregnant with her second child in addition to her firstborn daughter. So today's word is bat, or daughter. Bat can also mean female or daughter of, which is where we get city names like Bat Yam, meaning the daughter of the sea, or even first names like Batya, meaning the daughter of God. Whatever kind of bat you're talking about, though, just don't take her for granted, because a bat is a precious gift and we should all treat our daughters like Wonder Women. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight should be windy with a low of 62 degrees or 17 Celsius. Tomorrow is expected to be unseasonably hot with an additional rise in temperatures to a high of 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.81 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.